Hi, everybody. It is Monday, the day after we're still dealing with the hangover from GARBAUGUST 1.5. No, that was a fun weekend, though, I will say. So, in preparation, I read Palomino by Danielle Steele, which I reviewed in another video. I did the dramatic reading of Almost a Family by Liberty Adams, which I'm sure was fun for nobody but me. Yes, but there will be more fun to come. And the other book that I chose to read was I, the Jury by Mickey Spillane, which was the very first in Spillane's Mike Hammer series. And I have not quite finished that one. I'm probably not going to review it once I finish it because I didn't hate it, but I also didn't love it. What I enjoyed about it, oh, and the other thing that I enjoyed this weekend was Criminali, who is the mastermind behind the concept of GARBAUGUST. He held a couple of reading sprints, and I enjoyed being part of it at 3 o'clock in the morning on Sunday morning. So everybody sort of logs in, and then we have a little chat, and then Ollie set a timer, and we just all kind of, as a group, read together, which is a little bit weird, but it's also an interesting thing to do just as a testament to what social, how social interaction has morphed, in this day and age. It's kind of weird that people all over the world can all sort of sit and read together for an hour, which I don't know. I'm sure smarter people than me would have a lot to say about parasocial relationships, but it was kind of cool to sit with all those people from all over the place and just read for a while. So yeah, I'm about 40 pages from the end of I, the Jury. Now I, the Jury has this meta trash quality to it. Here's why. And this is why I picked it for the first GARBAUGUST, which I didn't get a chance to read it last time around. So it does actually also count towards my read what you own goal. It's been mentioned in at least 2 other books that I've read that would themselves be considered pretty pulpy and trashy, depending on who is, talking, responding, whatever, right? So the first book where I, the Jury is mentioned is in It by Stephen King, which is my all-time favorite Stephen King novel. I just love the book. I always have. I've done other videos about it. And the book, I, the Jury, gets mentioned in the scene where Eddie has his arm broken and he's in an ambulance on the way to the hospital. And it's kind of surreal because Eddie's really out of it between pain, and I don't know if they give him a painkiller or not, but he's pretty out of it, and so he's kind of hallucinating. He hallucinates Pennywise is driving, and that's just some guy with a crew cut. But he also, but then when he sort of comes back to himself, he sees that the ambulance attendant that's in the back of the ambulance with him, is reading I, the Jury. And the comment, and this is such Stephen King, is that the woman on the cover has the largest breasts that he's ever seen. And then Eddie sort of passes out. And what makes that amusing to me is that there's another YouTuber, I can't remember the YouTuber's name, but she did a video called Every Time Stephen King Mentions Badonkers. And what makes it even doubly hilarious is that it's a 4-hour video. So yes, very, very Stephen King. And then the other time that it was, and this is the reason I bought it in the first place, except, it was only like $2, $2.99 or something on Kindle. It was quite a good price. The other time that I saw it mentioned was last year when I read Chances by Jackie Collins, who is, one of our trashy queens of sleazy garbage pulp literature. She's great. She's one of my all-time favorites. So I read Chances, and there's a scene where the main character, Gino, catches his girlfriend reading I, the Jury, and he loudly proclaims it to be trash and that Marco shouldn't be reading it. And Marco defends it. He's like, no, man, it's actually a good book. So it's trash inside of trash. So of course I had to pick it up. Now, as far as my response to the book, like I said, I'm not hating it, but I'm also not loving it. The hard-boiled quality is definitely, it lends a great character and sets it in a very specific time and place. I believe it's after World War II, but I think it was published in like 1951 or something. I'd have to look that up, but I'm too lazy to do that right now. Sorry. And the premise is that Mike Hammer, who is a hard-boiled PI, private investigator, although he has a cop's license, so I haven't quite figured out if he's still a cop or if he's like, he was a cop, but he just has the badge and shows it around or something. I don't know. Anyway, his friend Jack, who lost an arm in the war, he's murdered on the first page. And this is a good friend of his, and Mike loudly proclaims to the heavens that he will find the person who did this and he will blow them away. And this gets printed. So he's got a cop tailing him at all times as he goes through his investigation. And one of the things that I find interesting is, after I read Winter's Bone, I looked up a little bit about what kind of makes a book noir as opposed to other types of even mystery, crime fiction, thriller, anything in that genre. And they said that one of the standard plot premises is that the main character goes looking for somebody, and it ends up being a much deeper, broader problem than he first thought. So he's not just looking for some rando who killed his friend. He's trying to figure out why and who, and the people that he keeps sort of tagging as the people who are somehow responsible or involved, they keep turning up dead. So it has some interesting plot twists. There's lots of action. The common at the time racist language is a little bit jarring to a modern eye. But even though it's racist language and two of the characters are definitely bad guys, he doesn't disrespect, like he's not awful to the people that are just kind of there, but the way that the character's language is just written is just so that's a tough one. But it was a product of its times, right? They're stereotypical characters. There's not a whole lot that can be done about that. I'm glad that our modern sensibilities, we don't write characters like that anymore. The other thing that I find really interesting is that there is a thread that he finds of a sort of prostitution ring that, again, to a modern... Sorry, I had to sneeze there. Whew. So the setup for the prostitution ring that he touches on is really, like, to a modern mind, is just, hang on again. Sorry, something's making my nose itch. Ugh. Don't know what. I'm sitting in my car. It's not like there's... Anyway, so the premise behind the prostitution ring is really odd to a modern reader, especially, in the wake of feminism and Roe v. Wade, even though that was overturned and that could be another consequence. So the premise is that the guy who set up this prostitution, if you can even call it a prostitution ring, he goes to college campuses, knocks the women up, and then they have nowhere to turn. So they end up in these brothels, and they end up working for the brothel because for whatever reason they're stuck there, right? Because they have, they're ruined women. They have no other options. And I mean, as a modern woman, I mean, you're college, like you're definitely high school educated. You have college. These days, you can just, in most state, or in half the states at least, you can get a nice, safe, clean abortion, be on your merry way. Or there isn't the stigma attached to single mothers that there was in 1950. And if you want to keep the baby, then you can go ahead and keep the baby, and there's help available. But at the time, it was just like the worst thing in the world that these women would be ruined and just on this path to devastation. So the really super old-fashioned result of being knocked up at 20 is hilarious. I mean, well, not hilarious. Like, it's not funny. I mean, you feel kind of bad for these characters, but as a modern reader, and it's just odd. Like, it's such a throwback to a time. The other thing that is a bit eye-rolling about the character is that he is a babe magnet. Now, now I've never read any of the other, Mickey Spillane books, but back in the 80s, I remember there being a series, and it starred Stacy Keach as Hammer. And looking back, Hammer, like, I like Stacy Keach as an actor. He's got that hard-ass, mean, gets the job done kind of quality to him, and I'm sure that was why he was cast as Hammer. But they should have picked a better looking actor. I'm sorry. Hammer. Okay, so of the 6 women that have any significant role, he has sex with 2 of them. One of them is in love with him. One of them's a prostitute who was expecting to have sex with him. One is the wife of his best friend, so of course she's, persona non nookie, as they said in Clerks 2. Just, she's not somebody that he would ever consider. And then the other one we haven't quite met yet. So like 4 of 6 women are somehow romantically or sexually involved with him in the course of 120 pages so far. So, I mean, whatever. I just find it, this whole babe magnet business just kind of hysterical. But yeah, it's a pretty good read so far. There's lots of action, lots of twists and turns, lots of people turning up dead, and you wonder why. But there are some scenes where it sort of loses me, just in the way that it's presented, and the way, like, he spends a lot of time kind of talking to people, and if you zone out a little bit, you kind of go back and wait, and it's like, wait, why are they shooting at him now? So I do find it a little bit hard to just kind of focus on, but it's picking up as we get closer and closer to the end. So overall, not too bad. I'll be finishing it probably tonight. And now, in other news, the other thing that I was hoping to have this at least, looked at or whatever. I'll be reading this for the next GARBAUGUST because I do want to ruminate on why the world hates teenage girls. Now, this book is a celebration of books that are aimed at teen and tween girls. And one of the things we talk about with GARBAUGUST and with so-called trash fiction is cheaply made, mass-produced books that cash in on popularity and just try to make a lot of money for the publishers. And the paperback fiction of the 80s and 90s, you had any random page you open, you had the kind of photorealistic pictures of the characters, you had lots of bright colors, you had pretty simple storylines, recognizable, the characters, the way they interacted. There's a very breezy tone. And you could just read them and just like, it was like candy. Like you just keep eating and eating and reading and reading. And these books were very popular, but they were probably a very huge seller for the publishers. So that's one of the things that we talk about in trying to define what exactly is considered trash fiction. And when you write book reports, a lot of the time, these are not the books that your teacher wants you to write book reports on. But at the same time, I think that there is an incredible cynicism involved, because the world hates teenage girls. It really does. Anything that appeals to young women immediately is dismissed as shallow, brainless, vapid. And whenever young women get interested in something, well, all of a sudden then that thing sucks. Even though at the same time, young women are encouraged, and this is, I'm making a sweeping generalization, but certainly in my day, a lot of young women are encouraged to be industrious and to get jobs and to earn money and to, babysitting or chores around the house or what have you. And so sorry, nose is itchy again. And because they, or part-time jobs, I mean, you'll find a lot of high schoolers with jobs are young women, fast food industry and so on. So in addition to being considered shallow and vapid, young women also have a tremendous amount of buying power, which is why books like this are the target audience, because they know how much disposable cash that age group has. So there's this really cynical quality to the production of these books. And I would like to, for the next GARBAUGUST, I'd like to get this book read, because, I mean, look at it. It is just, it's fantastic. It's glossy. There's quite a few books in here that I recognize either as books that I picked up, books that I read myself when I was younger, or books that were, they were the ones that everybody talked about. Oh, I know that book. Norma Klein, Diary of a Pregnant Teenager. Yes, and they talk about the whole Beatrice Sparks fiasco. There's a couple interviews in here. There's an interview with Christopher Pike, I think. Sick lit criticism. So like The Fault in Our Stars, where the kids are dying. Anyway, I can go on and on about this, but the sort of the long and short of it is that I am intrigued by why the world hates teenage girls. And yet at the same time, there exists this whole huge market of YA fiction that is aimed at teenage girls. And I gotta confess, I tried listening to the audiobook of Twilight, and I just couldn't. I'm sorry, I just couldn't. And that's part of it. But so I'll leave it there with my musing. What was it? There's something else. Oh yeah, my own experience with these books. Now, I'm a little bit older than the target market. So I would have been reading sort of children's YA fiction in the early to mid 80s. And then after that, I sort of made this, the crossover into reading more adult fiction. I would still read the occasional teen-oriented book, but these books are talking about more 80s, 90s, right up into the aughts. So I do remember reading some of these books like when I was babysitting into my late teens. But I'm looking forward to reading Paperback Crush and getting back to you about the phenomenon of why the world hates teenage girls, but why they will cash in on them. So that's the wrap up for GARBAUGUST 1.5. I hope you're reading lots of horror. Have a great day.